much
real
beneficial.
life, some women cannot be pregnated, and thus they can only adopt babies online. It is okay to adopt babies in virtual world, like Second Life, but there is a clear boundary line that separates what it's okay to do and what is not okay. For instance, it's okay to take care of real baby and the virtual baby at the same time and placing equal importance on both of them. But it is just wrong to abandon the real baby in order to care for a virtual baby. As parents, you have the responsibility to care for the babies that you create. This is a case of an online couple trying to create a baby. Okay, so make that one boy with a Labrador ears and tails, blue eyes, brown hair, real cute, you know. Okay, I think I have just the thing you're looking for. He'll be $2,500 and you can have as many copies of him as you like, but you can't give him away. Can I modify him? Physically, yes, but not his programming. Make sure you keep an original copy back through just in case you mess up during the modification. Okay, will do. Thanks for the advice. How is that realistic? How is the relationship between a parent and a child realistic? How is that whole process of making a baby, such as prim babies on Second Life, realistic? It makes the whole process of reproducing sound like a computer system without emotions. Whereas a real world relationship will have a conversation like this. I love you, baby. I think it's time we bring a little one into our family. Darling, our baby is gonna look beautiful because you're beautiful and she's gonna have your beautiful eyes that I fell in love with. Doctor, please help us deliver our child. There's a lot more emotions in
Quote
that.
depicts a common opinion of the similarity of morals in virtual worlds and real worlds. People should always remember to treat virtual people and virtual pets with respect. In the case of people, there's a typist on the other end with real feelings, and in the case of pets, we don't know what we're dealing with, but we do know that our virtual character depends a lot on how we treat these sim pets. Don't blacken your soul by rehearsing evil deeds. Calling it simulation does not change a thing. Your soul is at stake. Take care of it.
In virtual worlds, often what you do has a direct outcome, unlike the unreliable and unpredictable real life. For example, if you do certain things in an online game, you receive X amounts of experience points, which will eventually lead to benefits according to your level. In effect, the amount of effort and time one invests into virtual life always returns benefits and rewards that correspond. This is not the case in real life. What you put into something, for example, taking care of your child, may not give back the happiness you desire.
Although these are pertinent issues concerning the dynamics in virtual worlds, in this case there is no presence of a moral dilemma. If we define morality as a mandate to be dutiful in our intentions and just in our interactions, our morality is naturally rooted within the empirical realm. Therefore, many players superimpose their perceptions of empirical morality to create a virtual moral code for themselves. This virtual morality enhances their experience of the game and draws parallels between their real and virtual lives. But if a real person is neglecting real duties in favor of performing their virtual duties, it is indeed a violation of morality. The manner in which we assign meaning to our own experiences can stimulate or inhibit the satisfaction of the experience, and it is not a bad thing to choose to devote energy to virtual worlds. A transgression against morality only arises when the player forsakes their real-world obligations for virtual
When we
life.
attempt to break down the distinction between real and virtual realities, we can't just address the philosophical and moral questions raised. After all, it's not likely we'll come up with any perfectly undisputed conclusion on such broad topics. That's why it's important to evaluate this distinction within tangible context. We can quantitatively see virtual worlds assert themselves and their legitimacy within their own economies. Perhaps one of the most amazing developments in virtual worlds is the successful expansion of virtual economies. Virtual economies serve as an integral part of multiple gaming systems. In virtual worlds such as Second Life and Facebook, hard cash can be introduced into the system. In many cases, investment in these economies can yield true profits. Profits which themselves can be extracted from the virtual worlds they existed in and reintroduced into real economies. Of course, the achievable profits in virtual worlds are arguably much less than those opportunities offered within a real market. Additionally, it's hard to ignore the limitations of economies in virtual worlds. The most important evidence of this limitation lies within an individual's encouragement to enter virtual markets in the first place. It's claimed that people enter these virtual economies for recreation and entertainment rather than necessity. This means that virtual economies lack the aspects of a real economy that aren't considered to be fun. Obviously, players in a virtual economy do not need to buy food in order to survive. While virtual economies may obviously lack some aspects of the real market, they still persist under the defense that they have inherent value. Players of these virtual games are willing to substitute real economic resources of time and money in exchange for these resources. By definition, they have thus demonstrated utility to
To elucidate the distinction between the real world and virtual worlds, it helps to examine the roles of real and virtual assets. Is one more fleeting than the other? Or are virtual assets an extension of the real world, disguised by virtual currency and exchange rates? Currently, most people in the world have had or are having a very personal experience with the volatility of the economy, both nationally and internationally. The United States has recently experienced a recession following the economic prosperity of the 90s. Plus, Greece just received a $140 billion bailout as the euro's value plunges and the countries within the European Union scramble to combat the downturn. Virtual currencies correspond to real-world money. In the case of Second Life, the exchange rate of the US dollar to lindens is calculated through the Lindex, which is reported to process approximately $230,000 in US dollars every day. Undeniably, virtual assets can produce real-world fortunes. There are numerous examples of virtual entrepreneurs who invest a minimal amount of money, think $10, and convert it into millions. So who's to say that virtual assets are less important or even less real than real-world assets? Even though more people conduct business within the real world on a daily basis, the people who do live and do business in virtual worlds are extremely dedicated to their purpose and take their trade extremely seriously. Therefore, the value that they place on their virtual business parallels the value that businessmen in the real world place on their real-world business. Virtual trader Kenneth Michael Merrill explains, "What I love the most and the idea that gives me the chills is that I'm buying nothing and then selling nothing for a profit. Yet virtual worlds do not provide ideal utopian-style economies. In reality, they also suffer from crime. There's virtual crime. For instance, when some players use bots to defeat other players and steal their properties, which they can then convert into real-world money. So, the virtual world is not exempt from all of the problems that the real world does face. Therefore, I think that when we examine the difference and the distinctions between real and virtual worlds, it's not so much so that virtual assets are less valuable or less real than real-world assets, because they are plagued by the same problems and can produce the same benefits. I think the distinction is much more important in the sense that there are some people who are greedy and they will choose to exploit real or virtual worlds in order to get more money. And that's where the problem with assets comes in. It's not so much that there's a virtual problem or a real world problem, it's a social and humanity-based problem that extends both into the virtual and real worlds.